Well, I think we're recording, and we're after 6 o'clock now, so we can get started. So thanks for all coming tonight. I know everybody probably has busy schedules at this time of the year, so that's why we have a smaller crowd, is my guess. Maybe not, but...
No hot topics.
Maybe there's hot topics. That's what we're here about tonight. Maybe there's something I'm not aware of that's going on, and we can discuss that. So the comments that were made, just in regards to the meeting the other night, what I can say is that on the advice of our attorneys, that we don't talk about that for a potential claim in the future, so it's best not to state anything at this time. So I won't be able to answer any questions in regards to that. So, but I'm here for you guys to answer any questions that you might have about other topics or just anything in general in the village. Nyla, thanks for starting us off.
First of all, I would like to thank you. I live really close to the library, and I see the progress on it. And thank you to the village staff and all of you that who have worked so hard to get that project off and going. And I'm looking forward to the grand opening or whatever you do with village libraries, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, next summer is going to be an interesting time. Just with that opening, the Hubbly project opening, the restaurant opening, there's a lot of things that are happening. So.
Okay, now I'd like to make a comment with a question at the end.
Okay.
Pertaining to the Housing Task Force and the conversation we had at the end of the evening. I'm going to say this because I want you to know how not only I feel, but I think a lot of working families feel. We have been here, some of us 40 years, longer, 50 years. We are the people who built Waunakee. We manned the fire department, the EMS, and it's unfortunate that our incomes became stagnant and they never grew. So now and then we got all these exclusive communities outside of Waunakee, and it feels somewhat like we're segregated sometimes. I mean, I'm not on purpose.
Can I stop you just for a second? When
yeah.
you say communities outside of Waunakee, do you mean other communities or subdivisions?
I'm saying subdivisions.
Okay. Okay.
And so, so I guess what I'm saying is, and then when I hear the conversation, I understand that to do anything you need a way to finance it. That's very important. But then when I hear something, and I can't quote you, I'm not good at that, but something to the fact that you don't know how CEOs or people who have moved in here will feel about perhaps helping fund projects to bring people in. Okay, now my comment on that is, number one, 30 years ago when this whole mess started, nobody asked any of us what we wanted. Nobody. We got what we got. And right now I'm like, why are, yes, the entire village has to pay for these projects, but I don't think that the people in the exclusive community should have any more to say about it than anybody else. And then my other comment is if they don't want to bring people in, working families, teachers, plumbers, people who work in factories, people like myself. My husband has given 28 years to the EMS. I have been involved in the village, school, and church ever since I moved to Waunakee. Who do they want living next to them? Who's going to carry the load in Waunakee? Because many of these people, unfortunately, are proud to go to work and say, I live in Waunakee, but I've never been in downtown Waunakee. So please tell me, why is it that we, the working people, are kind of like, this is how I feel, this isn't what you said, are now kind of unacceptable to bring into Waunakee.
Okay, and maybe I wasn't as eloquent as I needed to be with how I stated it. I was really trying to get the whole task force to think about these other things, because there was topics that were coming up, where you talked about, I think one of your comments was in regards to that we're pricing people out with taxes, their home values and such, that have been here for a long time. And then but I was hearing a consistent theme of subsidizing housing across the room. And so my thoughts to that was, the only way we can subsidize is where's the funding going to come from? If we don't get grants from elsewhere, that means that it comes on the tax rolls in Waunakee. So that means we have to increase taxes to be able to subsidize.
Okay, I understand that.
So that's what I was just trying to get people to think that's one area, that's just one thing. I was just trying to provoke people thinking for future meetings, because we have all these topics. We're having a meeting January 3rd with Kristen.
The next task force?
No. That we're meeting with her just to kind of round everything in so we have everything
Oh, yeah.
It's first week of January, remember with Kristen, 'cause what I was trying to do was just provoke thought of all the topics that were coming out there, to think of there's other different viewpoints that are going to come in from this, and that's what we said in our group, is we wanted to make sure we were respecting all the different people.
So one follow-up question. The housing task force, we have limited time, limited resources, limited knowledge. Waunakee has a very good staff that is very capable of getting things done when they're directed to do so. Are we, as a task force, just supposed to come up with all these grand ideas, not knowing whether it is even possible or not? Or at some point, are we going to be provided information saying there's a program out there, there's federal money here, there's, you know, different sources of funding? Because I don't, being on the task force, I don't want to recommend something that's pie in the sky that isn't even possible, because that's wasting my time.
Agreed. So I think that's what's going to happen in the second half, because we're kind of going to the second half of what we're doing with the task force, and we're going to try to start to round those things in, so we have all those facts and information, and we have the speakers that are going to come in on the different topics. We're going to learn about those things you're talking about now. And the recommendation is really, it's more we're going to be getting information, and we're going to say, here's what we found in Waunakee. This is what we have. Then it'll come to the board, and that's when the board's going to start to have to make decisions on those things. So we're just trying to get all the facts out there in front of everyone and go through the process. Mary, your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm actually, in regards to what Nyla was just discussing and things that you have said about wanting to keep our people, our kids, in town. For example, my daughter doesn't live in town. I've been going out talking to people I know whose kids were in with my daughter. She's now 36, so that age group where you would be attracting people. And I said to them, I said, why are your kids not living here? They can't afford it. And they're, you know, and the one lady I was talking to said, well, what about the schools? And they're like going, well, this young woman is living in Oregon, and she goes, Mom, the schools are just as good in Oregon as what they are in Waunakee. And my daughter specifically looked for housing that was specifically outside of the Waunakee schools because of complications she had up there. So we're not appealing to our children in an income bracket that they can afford. My daughter's educated, her daughter's educated, but they can't afford the housing here, even if they would want to come in. So, and that woman babysits for her, so they come from Oregon to Waunakee so we can babysit. I get my grandkids from wherever they're living, Madison and DeForest area, and babysit them for here. We're not attracting our children to stay. And that's an issue. We need homes that are $250,000 to $300,000 homes. They can't afford $500,000 and up, or even $400,000 and up.
Okay. And I think that's where we're trying to address with that. I don't disagree with you at all.
Yeah.
Anything else on housing, or do we want to?
How does that happen? Is that because the people want those big houses? Can't they still build a smaller house?
Yeah, I kind of, my take on that is we had Arboretum, or Savannah Village. And Savannah Village was plotted. The lots are 7,300 square foot. They're very tiny lots compared to most of the village. And every single home in there is to the max density they can get onto that piece of property. So that drove those prices on those houses all up. So if you look at the land sizes, you would have thought there would be smaller houses in there.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Then we had, who was the developer that was before? Kilkenny. Who had that land?
Oh, Viridian?
Viridian was looking at where Kilkenny came into play, and the housing market wasn't that great, or the economy wasn't all that great at the time, and they just couldn't make it work for what they were trying to accomplish, and that's when the land was sold, and then it turned into a little bit bigger lots, bigger houses, all that took place. So it's do we make a decision as a board to say we're going to force housing at this size, and is that right for a free market society? That's one thing we have to consider. So that's part of what our housing study is hopefully going to come out with,
right.
And what are our options and how we can maybe accomplish that.
But another frustration that I had after the 2008, downfall, is in a couple of years, many people's taxes went down. And the reason I knew this, I was going to Curves, and everyone was thrilled that their tax responsibility went down on their property taxes. Mine never went down, they went up. 3 years in a row they went up. And so I went and talked to Julie. I said, Julie, what's wrong here? We didn't do anything to our house, what is the problem? Well, she explained to me that because I live in a modest ranch home that is sellable in any market, that was maintaining or going up in value compared to the people who have these big fancy homes that were built to their specifications. And, their house might have gone down $3,000 what they were paying in property taxes. Mine went up $450 in 3 years. I know that has nothing to do with you because it's state, it's all dictated by the state, but I feel like I'm paying for everybody else's folly. Because when the market goes down, I pay more taxes and they pay less, and they have a big fancy house, I don't. To me, that's ridiculous to expect the small guy to make up the difference in the taxes.
Okay.
I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And I think the system is, you're talking about free market. The system is not balanced because it's really, really lopsided in how things are done when it comes to so many things. And it's like this whole game is rigged against what's becoming the working poor, and that's an oxymoron as far as I'm concerned. People who are working should not have to have subsidized housing. They should not have to go to neighborhood connections. So,
It's one of the reasons I don't want to go above where I'm at right now in politics, because you're treading into a higher level of, all the way up to the President of the United States, down to our governor, to our senators, to our House of Representatives. Those are the people that are making a lot of those taxation policies. And if you've been watching, a lot of the state things have been being pushed down to the local level.
Exactly.
From a cost perspective. So that's another issue that we have to, that I would be wanting to address.
well, instead of you getting some income taxes money from the state, you don't get it, so then the village has to do something to make up that amount. So then we, instead of having everything on our property taxes like we used to, then we end up with some things being put on user fees, and all it is a vicious cycle. People don't seem to understand that you have to pay for goods and services. It's just a matter on which group is paying them.
It's a lot of vicious cycles.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like a dog chasing its tail.
I was asked to ask about the duplex that, by somebody who couldn't be here tonight. The 2nd Street duplex, Todd, you said that you were going to check to see if they had changed what they had submitted to you guys. They had their drawings, their renderings that they gave you looked totally different than what they actually built. And for example, there was supposed to be brick along the whole side of 2nd Street, and there was supposed to be I don't know what the rooftop line is, but like a A-line or whatever they call rooftop.
A gable or something.
Yes, a gable. There's no gable. And I was wondering if you had checked on that?
We sent the owner a letter and asked him to connect with us. I think where that stands is we traded a couple phone calls back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But we've initiated conversation, we just have to connect to ask
Okay.
those questions.
Okay.
And the questions will be both for him, the question of why the change was made, and then I have to verify that if he did change it, that it followed the procedures to do so.
Mm.
So step 1, talk to the owner
Yep.
and find out.
Okay.
Yes, Nyla?
I have a question pertaining to existing rental properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
When people are having problems with maintenance in their rental properties, I'm not saying the owner, the person renting them, what recourse do they have to ask, they ask the owner, please fix this, please repair this. Does Village of Waunakee have any way so that a person who's renting a place has any recourse to have repairs done on a property that need to be made?
It's an interesting topic. I'm only saying this because my children being in college and one of them living in a house downtown Madison where their stove fell through the floor.
Hope nobody was under
There
it.
was a hole to start with and it actually just ended up caving down. Which obviously was out of, there was definitely code violations in there. I think that's what you're getting at?
Yes, I'm not talking about little
Shouldn't the
things.
building inspector check
Yeah.
that?
So I think, do you want to address our policies on that with the building inspector? But I mean, I can take, for example, the houses by Prairie, I think they're duplexes, 8 in a row right there.
Mhm,
That
duplexes.
It was a hot topic at one time. You know, those were one of the shootings occurred, or gunfire was happening. And there was quite a few things identified with those residences, of which many of them have been upgraded now or changed.
They're looking done.
So that's
Yeah,
kind of the process.
generally our code concerns itself mostly with exterior features. The quality of the interior facilities are a landlord-tenant issue, and what we do, if we get calls from people about that, to the extent that the building inspector can do things, certainly we work with them to do it, but most times it's referrals to Dane County and the landlord-tenant department. I think it's in Human Services, and they have specialists there who work to help negotiate or hold landlords to what their expectations are.
So what happens if a family's been trying to get some electrical work? This isn't anything I know about, I'm just giving you an example. They've been trying to get electrical work taken care of and the owner won't do anything and suddenly there's a fire. Who's responsible? When, you know, they contacted the village says we can't do anything, they don't know where to go or how to get anything done, and then there's a fire. Are we not responsible? You know, I'm not saying we should be liable, but shouldn't people have some recourse? That's why some of these places are getting run down, is because they know they don't have to do anything.
I think the building inspector should do something. When I worked for Wilton, he did. He'd go in and say something.
Well, the first thing would be for somebody to let us know. If that step is taken, that helps us then take our next step.
Who do they call then?
Well, we start with a building inspector to see what, if any, authority he has to address the situation. And they'll do likely what they're able to do, but sometimes it's a matter of a living arrangement and a quality of the housing and interior that has to be settled between the landlord and the tenant. And there's resources at the county level to help residents with that. We don't have those resources at the village hall. But if it's a matter of fire inspection, sometimes the fire inspector is involved. But if we're informed, we'll
So
we
it
send it
depends
down.
a lot on how they address it. If they call and say, my light fixture is hanging, you're probably not going to do anything, but if you say, I'm afraid of having a fire because electricity is so bad in this place, then you might do something.
But yeah, I would say that's correct, that it depends on the circumstances. Certainly if it's aesthetic or like they're not repairing my water heater and stuff like that, those are matters of landlord-tenant relations. If there's hazards, I think those are things that would get the building inspector more involved.
Okay.
But one thing we can check on, and Adam maybe make a note of this, is we can check our website to make sure we have appropriate instructions for what to do in what circumstances. It's hard to what if everything.
Yeah, but if they call, at least then your staff would have some kind of idea what to tell them, you know, or whatever. I mean, because right now for people to call and just to be told, well, there's nothing we can do.
Well, sometimes that's a true answer, though, when it comes to what legally the village can or can't do, and what our ordinances allow us to do. And usually it's not sorry for you. A lot of times it's here's a resource at the county with their caseworkers who can help with these situations. I think it's called the Tenant Resource Center.
Brenda Conco, take care of
Brenda Conco?
it. She's from Waunakee, you know.
Other comments, questions? Yes?
Well, I have a question just about exteriors of homes. Like, I drive by some homes where maybe windows have been broken or not out and they're just boards up. Isn't that sort of a health and safety hazard? A boarded up window?
I definitely know you can't have open windows. Broken windows that allow animals to go in and out.
Right.
There are certain categories that we can enforce. For example, the Verlaine properties that Chris was discussing. In response to numerous complaints that the village received, the village inspection department made a thorough review of that particular block and made a long laundry list of everything that was found and gave instructions and repair orders to the owners of those properties. So that's been our approach, that being a complaint-based approach. We don't have staff who canvass the village. It's also a challenge to, let's say, pick one neighborhood to be more
Scrutinized.
scrutinize one more than another.
Can I stop you there?
Oh, sure.
How would you guys feel if we had an inspection system where we were going around the village, checking everybody's homes and looking at everything that's going on in those homes?
Not within, but perhaps outside to some extent. I'm not talking about every little thing, I'm talking about major things.
Okay. Concrete being raised up on their driveways extra, to, you're saying window being out, to maybe siding that's not there, to, what would be a proper protocol for what you're thinking? I guess with that question, Mary Ellen. I'm just thinking out if we, because right now the way the process is that there's complaints about it, then the inspector's going out, as opposed to the inspector just constantly going around looking at everybody's homes, and all of a sudden somebody's, because we do have that inspector going around, people can get some really unexpected expensive things that happen to them that they're not prepared for.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking in terms of health and safety hazards, if they're just something obvious that, or, you know, even let's say the utility department, if they sort of think that there's something strange about hookups or something like that, that maybe those should be investigated, or, you know, gas leaks or whatever.
The one process that some communities have used is called compliance inspections that occur by ordinance upon the sale of property. That it's paid for as a fee on the sale, and it requires an internal and external inspection of the property and required improvements as a result if there are code violations found. It's called the code compliance program. What that does is it eventually makes its way into every home in the entire village, but the sale is the instigator of that inspection. So that's one process that's been undertaken to get in and through homes.
But that kind of already happens because most people can't get a loan unless a house is up to certain requirements anyway.
Well, which is probably a private inspection required by the bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might be what you're talking
And
about.
those specifications are usually pretty high because they don't even give you a loan if you try to get a home and it doesn't have flooring, even though you know the people moving in probably going to put the flooring in. If you pulled up your flooring, they're not going to give you a loan. I mean, I know people who have gone through that. You know, people buying the place say, we don't care there's no flooring there, we'll put our own in. And the bank says, but it has to be in there.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, that's just one example.
I think now, you know, in the past when people were turning some of these older one-family homes into two-family homes or whatever, there wasn't a lot of oversight on that. But now that has changed. If someone wanted to do that, wouldn't they have to go through some sort of an inspection or an okay to do this, to change the
I'm not exactly certain on that. To be a renter, to be a landlord, I know there are some obligations through Dane County to lease to people, and some rules and regulations you have to follow to be a landlord. You have to go through, and then there's some landlord training and landlord obligation. I'm not an expert in that area. Again, that's something monitored and managed by the county.
Aren't
I
you
know
talking
today's-
about if a single-family home is turned into a 2-unit?
Right.
I think that's what she was talking about.
Yeah, you'd have
Does
to-
the
I mean,
village
you'd have to
oversee
have a
that?
building permit. I mean,
Yeah.
just to do that.
Yeah, the building inspector would have to inspect.
You'd have to have
it
a
for
permit to
sure,
do
it's
that.
right.
If there's modifications to the property that require a permit, if there's a second meter that has to get installed and things like that, that would call for an inspection.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this part either, but I would assume if you're turning something in that you're a rental property, you have to file that, especially if you have a loan. I'm with the bank.
But not with the village.
But it wouldn't be with the
No.
village, it would be outside the village. Pretty sure of that.
There's probably a litany of situations like that that nobody even knows about. When we'd be concerned if it was taking place in a zoning classification that doesn't allow multiple unit properties, it's hard for us to know. That would probably be a complaint situation, like a neighbor realized that another neighbor is renting out their second floor, and then the village comes along and takes a look at the situation.
But basically, anywhere in the central part of town, we're all R3, that would be allowed, right?
I think so.
Because of the districting, the ordinance that we're under, or the zoning ordinance. I don't know what they are out in the other developments, but I think we're all R3.
That would allow it. But I think most of the time you need, or typically the landlord will have a separate electric meter, or there need to be some electric work, serious access work done that would require a permit.
Does Waunakee have any Airbnbs?
I've looked, I haven't seen, but you know what, while you're talking, I'll see if they have anything on Virgo.
Well, yeah, that's what I was wondering, if anybody does.
I don't know the answer.
Do we have any restrictions on them, or any way that they need to pay extra fees?
Airbnbs?
Yeah.
I think that with anything that's what is it called? We talked about this with
For room tax?
hotel room tax. Yeah,
Room
hotel
tax, right.
Is where that
What do you have?
if it's
Some
Airbnb.
communities have seen the need to modify ordinances to address it because it's more of a commonplace occurrence. I've heard, just the fact that we're not sure if there's any in the village tells me that it's probably not a rampant
Yeah.
sort of scenario, but some communities it really has kind of taken over the short-term rental landscape, and they've had to change some rules and modify some things. But I'll find out if there's any here. I'll check right now.
Because we do have a hotel tax, because I know when Gather came in, they've got 5 or 6 rooms?
8.
8 rooms,
Oh, yeah.
that comes in as part of our hotel tax.
They're not being charged room tax at this point
Why not?
because they're not advertising as a hotel for anyone. It's to accommodate their guests that are doing the crafting on premise.
So they're not charging a room fee, they're charging just a per person fee to come in?
It's kind of a combination.
Okay.
If they do start to just simply make rooms available for a night or a 2-night stay, then we need to talk about whether they should be paying room tax.
Okay. Check into that. Okay. What else?
What's going on with Tech Line? Just looks kind of empty there. Maybe if there's a plan. Is there a plan for a new business perhaps to move in there, or any sort of redevelopment project where the site could be used for a better use perhaps?
Do you want to take that, or do you?
Yeah,
really on top of that?
The
That's-
former
that's-
Tech Line buildings are owned by Urban Holdings. For quite a while, they had a variety of rentals in there. They had companies that would store things. They looked at a major glass company about 5 or 6 years ago that would have used the whole space. That didn't pan out. They chose to go elsewhere. There's a change in ownership. One of the 2 key owners of the Urban Holdings group just passed away late this year, which is changing a little bit of their philosophy on trying to seek users. I just spoke to my contact there. He came and met with me shortly after the passing of the other gentleman. And I gave him a list, or we reviewed the list of the 5 or 6 different potential users that he's considered in the past. And he's going back to them again to see if there's potential intercon as one of them.
Yeah, intercom.
To see if there's potential interest now that the terms will be changing. So they're eagerly pursuing sale of the property or lease of the property. I think they do either lease or sale, but I think they'd be happy to sell. For a while, Cogdell Spencer used to still be doing work in a couple of the back buildings. They're not doing that any longer either. SPL purchased one of those separate buildings to the east, and then the other one, the furthest, the southeast little building back there closest to the railroad tracks, that's vacant and is also for sale.
Okay.
But I connect with them and send them leads. You know, every couple of months I would think we have some sort of interaction on a potential lead. It's a challenging property. They're big. They're each 400,000 square feet. It's a lot of real estate. Some users have found that some of the interior arrangement is tricky because there's a lot of vertical posts that make it difficult to use a big wide space. For example, folks are looking at it for a youth sports complex, soccer fields, volleyball courts, football is another new sport. Anyway, and they found that the vertical posts that are spattered through the space make it difficult to use for that particular type of use. Some other users have found that the ceilings are actually too low to do large-scale, serious manufacturing, so that hasn't worked for them. But there's been potential interest, but it's a large property to take down. Take down meaning to sell, to do a deal on. Not many users come along very often for that scale.
They're still paying their taxes.
That's true.
That's good.
So, no, they're not operating, they're still paying their taxes. So, other questions or things that you'd like to know about or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. How does it, okay, going back to the old building that was there before the library project, and the company,
One
you know,
Alloy.
yeah, the company came and purchased that, and then it sat there for all that time. I don't understand how they got by with just not paying their taxes, and then the village ended up, you know, cleaning that whole place up and everything. You know, I don't, you know, I understand how it happens, but why is it allowed to happen? I'm not saying anything against the village. I don't understand the ins and outs of that. I would think that if I left my property set, that I'd have to pay taxes, or you guys drain my bank account or something. And so I'd like to know exactly how these big companies get by with that.
Well, that,
Big company or
This is a contract.
big company or a little home. In all cases, there's a process through Dane County where tax foreclosure could occur. That's what occurred on the Waunakee Alloy site, and that, I mean, if you read the state journal, you see listings of tax foreclosed properties all the time. If any property, big or little, falls into more than 3 years of arrears in taxes, then the county is entitled to take tax foreclosure action. It doesn't force the county to, and frankly, the county was hesitant to deal with the Alloy property because there was no contamination. If I'm a county, I don't want to take ownership of a contaminated thing. So it actually took the village reaching written agreement with the county that if they were to take it on tax foreclosure, that we would immediately acquire it from the county. So the county didn't have intent to go after that property without that sort of agreement in place. So it was a very, very complicated scenario that we worked through. Chris was along for the whole ride. But a lot of things had to fall into place for that to kind of play out the way it did. In a property that isn't as complicated, the way it generally would work is is, let's say I don't pay taxes on my house for 3 years. Come year 4, I'm going to get a letter from the county. They're going to give me, I don't know what it is exactly, but maybe 90 days to pay off the oldest year of my taxes. So I could pay off the oldest year and then only be sitting there with 2 years in arrears, which would not allow them to pursue tax foreclosure. So what some properties, a habit of in some cases, is where a property would pay that 3rd oldest year when they get the notice, and they keep in compliance by limping through tax payments that way. If I failed to pay after that 60 days, I'm guessing it's 60 days, then they make another notice that they're able to take my property, and then they would turn it and sell it. So and then that's a second notice, which is another span of time, and I don't know if it's 30 or 90 days, but then there's more time to before I would lose my property to the county.
Okay. So then that's why when you buy a house, they always, I've heard real estate people say it's yours for at least a couple of years.
Oh, because of the 3 years in arrears?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have to pay the current taxes as well? Or do they just keep having 3 years in arrears?
No, it would be the oldest year that to stay good, they would have to pay that oldest year.
But then they also have to pay the interest, so.
Interest does accrue.
Yeah.
I never paid any, right?
And there's fees on top of that, and that's not forgiven. So what the jurisdictions who are not receiving the tax dollars are eventually going to be made whole, because that's first position in terms of being repaid. So the village actually had to pay off the old interest and old taxes on the Alloy property. That was the terms of our deal with the county. We had to pay that balance, and then that was the written deal. We then got the property when we paid the balance.
So there's more to it than that. I mean,
oh yeah, there's
that's
a lot more.
Yeah, because we had the cleanup and
We
everything.
ended up getting the grants and all the different things that were associated for it. That's why the process took so long in going through. As Todd's saying, there's different dates and things that we were having to meet. It was originally that we were going to buy the property, but they weren't allowing us to do testing and various other things, and we weren't going to.
Oh, it's a long novel. It's the story of how
this could be a 2-hour topic.
The good thing is it's being used in a positive way by the public, and otherwise, who knows, it would have sat forever. I mean, who's going to buy a place that's contaminated and they have to do a major cleanup?
Potential users did show interest over the years, and when they got far enough along to seeing some of the issues there, it kind of makes sense as to why that didn't work out. What we know now is if a different user came in and started to get into the guts of what we discovered there, the thought of any private deal occurring with adequate protections within a purchase agreement to protect a buyer, I don't know how anything but a government-supported outcome would have been at all possible. So, yeah, very, very complex.
Thank you for getting it cleaned up.
It needed to be. It
Yes, I
definitely
mean,
needed. So
it
it worked.
it's
Everything
really-
worked the way it should work for that property.
And it's a huge asset for the village.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Could have been good. All of his father's
Well, they walked away with nothing on that. They didn't get anything for that land.
Well, it's fair to say that what they also walked away with was a release of the liability on what was on the property. So
It wasn't a retirement fund for them.
Yeah,
I
In any way,
guess
shape, or
not.
form. No.
it doesn't feel like a win-win scenario for all involved, and I generally hope for that, but
It's a lose-lose for everybody, basically.
We won because we got it cleaned up.
Yeah, but
That's important.
Yeah, but the thing is at a huge, I mean, what I'm saying is monetarily, nobody really came out of it. I mean, yes, we got it cleaned up, but at a high price. But it needed to be done, so. Who wants to look at that for 100 years?
Right, Aaron?
So if we're talking about cleanups, is anybody watching the businesses we have now to make sure they're not leaving messes like that? Because that's the second property that had to be cleaned up in Waunakee. There was big cleanup for Stokely's, right? Wasn't there issues at the old Stokely location too?
Brownfield grant, yes.
So are we paying attention to what the businesses we have now are doing to make sure they're not contaminating our lands and going to leave us with a mess in the future?
The DNR is a very different animal than it was when Alloy was built or Stokely was built, and the monitoring that occurs, it's a whole different game these days.
And what people did 50 years ago is very different than what our people are doing now, too.
Right.
You know, where things were just thrown on their land somewhere that probably shouldn't have been just thrown, but nobody thought it was a big deal, and it just, that was what was done. Those things are monitored, all the other things.
And the process in building a factory or a facility that's significant requires a state approval process through permitting to build their plant. Essentially, the plans have to get approved through state process, and there comes in all the rigor of making sure that backflow preventers, I mean, all the stuff that's needed occurs during that process.
And the state buildings too are also made with things that really they're not using anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So that were hazardous. We were lead to mercury to all the different chemicals that were in some of the older buildings. Those don't happen now.
We do, I would admit, we do have to rely on the state for managing that program. That there's no way that a community like ours, or really any little community, could have the expertise needed to see to the rule and regulation regarding some of those very specific things, contamination, odors, water, all that stuff.
Which that we are monitoring. Water and water quality and all that is monitored by our Waunakee utility very heavily. So if you want to know what the water's like, just call Waunakee utility and they'll tell you exactly what the readings are for
It's a
everything.
whole report, that big.
Yes, it's constantly monitored.
I'd just like to make a comment about how things are different, because I know a person over in the Berlin area who's 77 years old, and when they purchased their house in 60s, she said some people said to her, well, why do you want to move to this area? Or either that or it might have been when the manufacturing company came in, I don't know which. And she said, I'm just very, very happy to be able to purchase a house. And that was her attitude. I don't care if that's there, as long as I can have a house. And so that's how tight, because a lot of people would never want to live next to, something like that anymore. She wasn't like right next to it, she's a couple blocks over, but she said that was something that she was asked quite often. She said, I'm just happy to be able to afford the house. Times have changed.
Absolutely.
Different strokes for
Yes.
different folks.
Sammy, you had your hand up? Did you
Yeah, I was reading an article on the Tribune website that talked about next year a new development that would be starting called Westbridge Farms, north of Westbridge, but I haven't heard about that being approved. Has that been approved at all?
That's just the school district knowing about the different things. They have a consultant talk about that at their meeting. But I don't think
Westbridge
Farms is
that's north of
it's the
Copper
north
Road.
side of Copper.
Yeah, and they're just starting this middle process for concept review. I think there's about 82 or 85 lots that Tierney's are proposing in that plat. It's immediately north of Westbridge, across from Copper Road. If that was in the school district population discussion, every year the school district's consultants sit down with the village planners and myself and Kevin even, and review the lay of the landscape at the time, what proposed projects, what's next, what's happening, when and where. So with that in mind, we talk about things like, we'll mention and remind them of the development that's over here by Hogan Road, where there's about 120 lots, I believe, that have been platted. And then you're referencing this area right here.
I think it's west, isn't it west of the railroad tracks? Because that's Meadowbrook.
Oh, I didn't move far enough. I didn't move far enough.
west.
Yep, right here, that brown area.
They're gonna build houses there yet too?
Yep, that's well, keep in mind, Tierney's have only 200 platted lots remaining on their active plats.
That's all they need. They don't need any more.
Well, we're doing about 85 to 90 single-family permits a year. So that's not adequate for the demand. I mean, the Tierneys are certainly looking strategically, and the village wants to have an adequate supply of lots platted for available use. I think we look to have 4 to 5 years of supply on the books at any given time in terms of the number of lots available.
Why do we have to keep having more houses?
Because our entire economy is built on development.
Well, and development occurs because of demand.
Todd, can I ask what type of housing units they're looking at for that?
Some big walkers.
I don't know much more beyond just the number of lots.
Okay.
I mean, I would guess it's going to be similar to Westbridge. That'd be my guess.
I don't know what Westbridge is.
Westbridge, the development just south of it.
That's too.
I think where Tierney has talked about some creative lot designs over in this development, particularly up along Quinn Drive that extends. There's some smaller lot designs that are established in here. Probably maybe 40 lots or so that would have a different product feel. I don't know specifics beyond just smaller lots, narrower with fewer features. And then when they get much further on the plat for this property here, so there's Kilkenny Farms, and that's where the Hy-Vee proposal is, and this is the area that Don would develop. Also, I forgot the name of Woodland West or something like that.
Yeah, it is a good given.
Lone Silo or something like that. But there's opportunity in there, and I know he's already talked about different product styles and price points. Don does point at, boy, this is old aerial. He does point at smaller lots that have been built here. Some of these lots were sold, I believe, in the $80,000 to $90,000 range per lot, which is about 40 less than some of the big ones down here or down here. But what came out of that was property, some of the smaller homes, and that's where the Viridian would have been. But they're still in the maybe just sub 400 at the cheapest. So that's where people chose to build in those locations.
So you're saying we're putting too many houses up. What happens to the housing if we don't put any up?
Just
And
seems like
if there's a demand to live here?
we have a nice little town and it's just going nuts.
From a financial standpoint, you're right, the driver of the schools, their funding formulas, everything, is a certain amount of growth. I mean, if I look at our surrounding communities, they're all growing. DeForest, Dane County in general has been growing. It's not just Waunakee, it's all of Dane County. It's already exploded. I should have said that word. I'd take that off the camera, please. Their growth has exploded out there, commercially to all across the board. They've put in a lot of smaller housing too. That's been affordable, I think, more affordable there. But they're putting 200, 300, 400 houses up, not 80.
We've got about 20 fewer single-family permits this year than last year, and that's not because of anything that we've done. That's because of simply demand change. That's being seen across the county too.
Well, I read that the housing market across the country is decreased by 22%. That it's just going down.
Slowing down.
Slowing down.
Yep,
yes.
we saw that a little bit. It probably also relates to the fact that some of the more Bishop's Bay lots came online, and a couple other developments in the town that were attractive to you.
Interest rates as they rise too will maybe hurt some things as well. So we'll see. Mary, go ahead.
So are there going to be some apartments instead of just all on downtown, out in some of those areas? New developments where you could put in the roads that are needed, the size roads to accommodate apartments?
Yeah, this development plan has support from the village board already. This is the potential Hy-Vee site, and in this are a later phase of the development that has has multifamily planned here and senior housing planned here.
Okay, and will the multifamily be for all different income levels, or are they just going to be high-end apartments?
I don't know the details on
I
the,
don't think we have that.
on the-
What about the ones in Kilkenny,
Yeah.
Steve Brown?
those are probably going to be the most expensive apartments in town. There's 82 units approved. I was talking to Jerry the other day, and he said that it's probably going to be $1,200 to $1,500 rents there, but that is.
And that again doesn't attract our children who are trying to come back to Waunakee.
I understand that.
I'm saying this because my daughter right now, who's 20, she's going to be 25, is in Middleton, and she's paying $1,500 a month there
Is she?
for a 2-bedroom place.
That's right.
So-
That's right here, and that's going to be. They're going to have amenities there. I don't know if there's going to be a pool or whatever, but clubhouse, the type of things that you'd expect to go with a $1,500 apartment, I guess. But this is the area for that.
And sadly, I shouldn't say this on camera because I'm sure it calls from outside of the community. Hopefully they won't watch it. Students get terribly taken advantage of.
Oh, I know. I work down on
All across
campus.
the
I
board
get
there.
that.
And what the kids have to pay down there is,
Yeah.
or their parents. Kids'
Yeah.
parents or the bank who's loaning them the money for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrible. Yes, Mariana?
Can't there ever be any financial incentives developed to make people realize that, oh, well, we could put in more affordable housing and still not lose our shirts, that maybe people that have more altruistic concerns about making
Well,
lower cost
I-
housing available to people.
I can tell you that the project to develop the Legion site, that our early discussions with those developers was going to involve a pretty significant TIF support component that would help them establish income limited and even some free units, I believe, for some veterans or veteran spouses. But that was going to be a senior-only, 100% income restricted development. And we were prepared if they worked out a deal with the Legion, and that was between them and the
Right.
Legion. It's okay that they decided what they did, but we were prepared to help the developer design a product that was going to do just that through the use of TIF. That's
Yeah.
essentially the only tool we have available to us to help make something like that occur.
What about the person that, several months ago talked about developing something out there where the vet clinic is to the east?
Yeah, they were talking about it.
The west.
Yeah, they were talking about a potential tax credit program too. I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, by McDonald's you're talking about.
Yeah,
Or
right.
Specifically McDonald's, that's their, yeah.
Yeah, they withdrew their request. No major reasons given besides it's not the right time for them.
Maybe it'd be the right time for somebody else.
It's possible. I know the house right next door is for sale now too. That last residential property that kind of sits by itself there.
This is something I heard, I don't know how it works, I'm asking you, but is I thought you may know something about it. I was told that once a TIF is to be paid off, they can somehow use funding from the last 2 years to be used toward housing projects.
Yep.
Is that true? And is that money that's left just for the TIF area that it's set up for, or can it be used in other areas of the town, or how does that work?
I believe, I'm not an expert in it, but I think it's 3 years, if there's remaining 3 years. I believe it's going to be addressed in the general development plan as a possibility, which we do now write into all of our TIF project plans. Some communities have done really well by that, especially those communities that have had a really successful TIF districts that have taken off. Middleton as an example. They've been able to build kind of a war chest of sorts of funds specific to helping assist low-income housing projects, affordable housing projects, with that supply of excess remaining, keeping the TIF open longer. We don't have that, in Waunakee, we haven't had that luxury yet. You know, the TIFs are getting close to closing. Keep in mind, some of them are closing at their last year. You know, there's no capacity.
Right, but I'm saying looking long-term.
Yep, and we are making sure that we write in our project plans the potential for that use of remaining years. At which point there would be a decision of the village boards to decide whether they want to keep it open longer or not.
Okay, you said affordable housing. Is it specific that it has to be certain incomes, or could a project possibly be done that's mixed income housing?
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm not an expert on that, but I could send you, there's probably a white paper on it that lays that out. Adam, we could connect with Ellers and get the white paper on that approach.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely aware of it, and we'd love for the opportunity to do it. Certainly what's foregone, keeping in mind, and the goal of any TIF district, I always like to remind people of this, is for it to go away.
Correct.
So eager for it to go away so that the tax base can return to all the jurisdictions. So the choice that the village board would make at that point would be to continue multiple years of foregoing that tax base in lieu of sending it to a special fund, which is noble and right in a lot of cases. So we have our eyes on that.
Did you know about that, Chris?
I did. I'm actually, we don't have a beltline or an interstate.
Right.
And Middleton had an advantage with their TIF where they were placed because of the beltline and the growth that they could put there and what they could attract into that.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury here.
Yeah, our entry in the TIF.
So to get the, what you're calling the home run district, what they got, to have those funds, we don't really have that capability right now. We don't have that infrastructure that they have. Now, if there's a north beltline that came around us somewhere,
Wouldn't that be wonderful
that
for
would
many
be
reasons?
that would be different, and then we may have that opportunity. But right now, we don't.
I don't know if Verona did that with Epic. They've already closed, if not all, a
Most of
portion
it, not quite all.
of that. I don't know if they had. What I do know that they had there is they had a very high balance of funds on hand that when they closed, they otherwise would have to return to the other jurisdictions. I don't know if they're able to keep that for specific purposes. But there's an example of a district that could do great things to support a fund like that.
Other questions? Any other TIF questions?
When did you start writing that in?
It's relatively new law, and I believe our financial advisors, we use Ellers and Associates, have made that a common approach once that law was created. I don't know the answer exactly, except that I know Ellers has been making it commonplace in their authoring of the project plans.
So you don't know how many TIFs it goes back?
Yeah, I was just curious, just roughly, not even exact.
Yeah, I think the law is less than 10 years old.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. Narrow it down.
The white paper that we tracked down might have some of that.
Okay.
Any other development questions?
You know what, I do actually have to apologize. I'm playing drums for my church's worship band on tomorrow night at their church services, and their practice starts a minute ago. So I have to go jingle bells and play the drums. But I wanted to remind you about this info if you wanted to use it.
I'll give it up.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Is that the group that's at the village center right now?
Yeah. Do you feel that you want to use the map or anything? Should I leave
Well,
this?
that's what I was just going to ask. Is there any other development questions that you have in regards to any of the grocery store things or any of those questions? Anything from that?
Can I make a comment about the grocery store thing?
I'm going to turn this off. Okay.
I don't know really know what's going on, but my impression is good business is someone that you've been doing business with, and just because somebody else comes in, you don't let them jump ahead of anything that's been going on previously. That's all I have to say about it. I mean, some people have the idea that anything goes in business. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think there's good ways to do business and bad ways to do business. I think IVs come, they've been working with the village for a long time, and that's the way it is. And I know nothing's that easy.
And we're moving full speed ahead.
We're moving ahead just like as if.
Yeah, I was just shocked that another store would even consider coming to Waunakee.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing for our community to have.
No.
I mean, we're going through the whole process right now to create a TIF for the infrastructure for that area for that. It's very clear that it's for the infrastructure.
Sorry. If you could jot your email on here with your sign-in, that could help us send out some follow-up info.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So that is very clear that that's for infrastructure. We're trying to work with the school district for that area to be there and make that a safe intersection because we know that area is going to develop and it's going to grow quickly. All right. The IV and the one little sliver is part of that TIF district. That's it. The rest of that isn't part of the TIF. But if you look at other communities, when a grocery store plants, you're going to see ding, 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 ding all right around it. With different opportunities for other vendors and types of companies. So Hy-Vee has started. We've engaged the process. Festival came in and gave a presentation. We haven't done really anything with that. All that was they came in and said, hey, we're interested in coming here. So from just looking at it from our perspective, why would we not want to at least listen to what they have to say to? Because if they come in and say, you know what, we're going to put the infrastructure in for you. Maybe we're interested in that. Maybe we don't need to create a TIF at that point. We shouldn't not listen to them for that reason. Hy-Vee is moving forward. We're doing as if they're coming.
It isn't Hy-Vee though that's asking for the TIF, it's the developer who developed the property, correct?
Correct. But the developer is. So the developer on the other side, is the developer going to come for TIF on that side? Because of the festival on that side? Because we're going to probably have to do some upgrades with Woodland Drive, the Holiday Drive going over because it's going to be, there's other things that will have to be, and we don't know any of those things at this time. That's the point. All they did was say that they're interested in coming and would like to be on that property. And they don't want to have a store across the street based on what they said on camera and in the meeting. I asked them very clearly, is 2 stores going to work? And they said, no, that's not going to work for us. Now, Hy-Vee may say different.
Yeah, I wouldn't see an issue with it. We used to have 2 stores with a whole heck of a lot less people
Oh, yeah.
in this town that were across the street from each other, and they both did well.
They did very well.
They did very, very well.
Yeah, Miller's and Rosenberg's. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I was even here then.
So, yes. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah.
So we're going through that process right now. I mean, it's exciting from an infrastructure standpoint because I really think that area is in need of that already, especially if you consider where the fields, where the soccer fields and the football practice fields and those, when the cars line up on there, and it's 5 o'clock and people are coming in, and that whole area is, I look at that as one of our more dangerous zones as far as I'm concerned. I had kids that played in those fields, and I was one of those people going over into that.
And there's young drivers driving into those practices.
Absolutely. Marilyn, you look like you had something. I can tell on your face. You had this excitement look. Go ahead.
I just have always been wondering when I hear about how places in the industrial park that they're having difficulty getting workers or people who can get rides or whatever. And I'm thinking, way back when industries or whatever were developing in areas, they somehow banded together and were able to provide an area where people could build more affordable housing. You just think of like all those houses around Oscar Myers.
Yeah,
exactly.
The north side was specifically built for Oscars.
And I just wonder if, there would ever be room or some sort of a concept within the industrial park area.
Maybe. I don't, it would have to be rezoned, of course, and would there be potential there? I mean, that's what Todd was referring to with that Tierney development that's over by there.
Yeah.
That there are going to be some smaller homes, lots, things like that right off of the industrial park there.
Yeah.
That could be what you're getting at. There's not that many parcels left necessarily in our industrial park now.
Yeah.
There's several that are going to be built on here in the next year. So that limits that as well. One of the things we're dealing with at the housing committee, on my table, I had Jeff too, from the new senior housing, right? Oh gosh, now I can't think of the name of it.
Bright
Star.
Bright Star, thank you. Bright Star. And he was talking about, he has multiple locations in Madison of facilities, and he has people that live, workers that live on Northport, in that area, that won't come to Waunakee. But they'll get on the bus and wait an hour and go across town to one of his facilities that's over on the west side of Madison. But he can't get them to drive 5 minutes down here because they don't have
They don't have vehicles.
You don't have
to
to.
get here. So we don't have any services to get here right now.
So has Waunakee ever thought about if we can't hook up with Madison Metro to do our own trolley from certain points? Like a smaller bus service? To
Yeah.
start that ourselves? And even just for people to get around town if
I
they
think
didn't want to
it's
drive?
getting closer where we can start to have that conversation because of this situation we're having. Madison really hasn't been interested. I mean, they got their kind of corner between Sunbury and Middleton, and that's where they go. They don't venture out this way. So how we
They don't go to Sun Prairie though.
They will.
They will be? It's not
Next
so-
year.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's their whole, yeah. Over the last 5 years, they've been kind of phasing that stuff. So I think we might have an argument that's coming up here, and we have to see what our costs would be to do that. And then maybe if our businesses are going to absorb some of that cost, because they need the workers as well to get that in there. So we'll have to see on that one. And write that one down. That's a good one for us to maybe.
Who takes
smaller
that little
shuttles.
bus? Who's in charge of that little bus that takes the senior citizens, like even to the senior center for lunch?
That's the senior center, isn't
That's
it?
the senior center.
It belongs to the senior center?
I'm thinking that's probably funded,
The county?
It's county.
yeah, funded through the county through like a aging and disability resource
Some
thing.
shopping in Madison.
Right.
Doctor's appointments,
Yep.
that
Wasn't
sort
there
of
some
stuff.
sort of shuttle out today at one point where some people rode to Madison? I think there was, like Mary Lou Carlos, whatever her last name is, and
That might have
Would've
been
done that.
something that was made through the state though, maybe? Was she working for the state?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I just know that there was something going back and forth.
There's rideshare programs.
There's
Like what
right
Sun Prairie has with their taxi service.
Frank, you're the only one who hasn't spoken tonight.
Hey, what?
You're the only
You're
one
the
who
only one who hasn't
hasn't
spoken yet tonight. Any comments or?
Well, I was just thinking about the industrial park, you know, everything's changed so much. There never used to be a problem with, if you built a factory and you needed workers, you built a dormitory. They all had dormitories at one time in history, and your workers had come from all over the world, and they stayed at the dormitory and worked in the factory. But they, you know, and that same thing that I get on TV, they'll talk about more train. MATC needs to train more people for industrial. Well, that's nonsense, because all the factories used to have their own apprenticeship programs and their training, and and they dumped it all off on the taxpayers, because let the taxpayers pay it through METC now. And I mean, now it's, we want to come build a factory in your town, and you're going to give us a tip or we're not coming. And they've got, I mean, boy, this attitude that they have now, I mean, it never was like that. I mean, they didn't. Nestle Candy Company, they had dormitories for years. I mean, it was all over.
It's called greed.
Yeah, that's terrible now. I mean, it's really something.
Did you say grade?
Greed.
Oh, greed.
Yeah,
I was like, what the hell do you mean by grade?
And then-
Greed.
Then on top of it, the villages have all made a terrible mistake in the towns, because everybody competed against everybody else building these industrial parks. They shouldn't have done that. There should have been a regional industrial park that was controlled by so many counties.
Yeah.
Like maybe each county had a regional, and that way now you've got all these, well, okay, if I was gonna have a brewery, one of these new breweries going up or something, I'd come to town and I'd say, well, you want me to come here? How much you gonna pay me to come here? And then, well, I'm getting so much from Waunakee, and then I'd go up to DeForest. I'd say, how much you want me to come up here? That's what I'd be playing. The game I'd play, I'd go right around it. Have my people go around to 40, 50 communities and rake them for all I could, just like Miller did in Fulton, New York.
Yeah.
Miller went back to Fulton, New York and took over the Bear Spring Farm. And that was one of the oldest farms in central New York, and there were springs, real springs that came right up out of the ground, several. It was some kind of an underground uplifting dump load there of water that came up just before it went into the river. It was just fabulous out there. And all the family sold, you know, like they do, and blah, blah. And Miller got hold of it, and they came back there, and that aquifer today is dry. I was with my cousin Joey in masonry at the time, and he was going to bid the flat work on them buildings. And he'd had some college, and we were going through there, and he said, wait a minute. He said, you know, they aren't going to be here 15 years, 18 years maybe. And I said, well, so let me go back a second. Fulton, New York, they rolled out this red carpet to them, gave them, they didn't pay any taxes. Miller never paid a dime in taxes the 18 years that they were there. Not one red cent. Plus they took the aquifer and sucked it dry, which affected Fulton's water. So anyway, we're driving around the truck, and Joey says, they aren't going to be here 15 years. I said, why? He said, the way they're building the building. See what they're building? He told me all about this structure, how they're building it, and the business model. He studied that in school. This is their business model. They're going to bring their machines here. They'll bolt them down. They aren't paying any taxes. They got all the water they need. The number one thing they needed, they never paid for, the water. That's the number one thing they needed. And they never paid for it, the water. And Miller did. Miller moved out, and they just, Fulton, to this day, 75% of the people who live in Fulton are either on state relief or Medicaid, Medicare. That's it. I know so much about it because that's where I'm from. That's where I live.
So you were close to Pennsylvania then? You were close to Pennsylvania?
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York, okay. I'm thinking
The real New York.
Your story is king, something that was happening out in Scott Run, Pennsylvania.
Well, that's what Miller did back there, and that was, they were onto this game like we're getting belted with now out here. They were onto that, what was I was 27.
Not everybody's belting it.
I mean, that was 50 years ago they were playing that game. 40 years ago they were Miller already was playing.
Who's our new businesses coming in right now from Middleton? Right for us from the hockey rink.
I can't remember.
I can't think of the name of it, but there's no incentives for them. They're coming here. And
Good.
They want to be here.
Any comment?
Sam put his hand up.
Go ahead,
I don't
Sam.
want him to forget what he was going to say because it seemed like it was.
Well, one thing that I've heard people in the community talk about is putting some sort of flood gauge on 6 Mile Creek, like what the Weather Service has in other communities like Lodi on their creek or DeForest on the river. And now that we're large enough, it may be a good idea to perhaps figure out how to put one in, you know, with all the plains downstream and the marshes. I don't know how we would necessarily do that.
So we don't necessarily have the problem here. It's more protecting Westport.
Well, right.
Is what we're talking
but it
about.
may be,
That's where the
yes.
water goes.
And
to.
it may just be good to have one anyway due to our size now.
So I feel like we've had monitors on our water here for a couple of years.
I feel like I've heard that too.
Check on that again for us, Adam. But I'm pretty sure we have because we were doing a lot of that when we were talking about the library site, and as far as monitoring the water levels, all that. Because when we were putting something near that, we had to make sure. So we were doing a lot of that monitoring.
Well, this is more of a gauge where the Weather Service can issue flood warnings, and you can view the data online, and you can see minor, major, moderate, etc. versus water line.
Okay. Good try. Adam, you got that? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to make a comment. I'm sure you're aware of it, but California has outlawed tip programs. Look it up. Do the research.
Okay.
And there's a reason for it. It's because I realize at this point that it doesn't drain the schools because the schools are going to get their money no matter what. What it does is drain the rest of the municipality because all the taxpayers have to pay it. What the TIF isn't paying, everybody else pays.
Right.
And so then the schools started to hurt because guess what? People got fed up with it, wouldn't pay for their school referendums. They wouldn't let referendums to go through. It's a circle. everything affects another thing.
Okay.
So please, if you have time, look into that. It's very interesting reading.
I mean, people would probably think that I'm a TIF fan. I'm not a TIF fan, but it is one of our tools that we have right now. That, as Frank was pointing out, they created this when they put and pitted communities against one another on different things, which makes it a challenge. And I have not, I mean, people don't know about the TIFs that we say no to, and the companies that come in and request that, because it happens behind things that we just say, no, I'm not interested in that.
You know what I'd like? And I know nobody's gonna do it for me. I'd like to know what the total dollar amount that my tax bill is for TIFs, to pay for TIFs.
You don't pay for TIFs.
It's affecting our
It
taxes.
affects our taxes.
So we can, this is going to, we don't have enough time
We've
to talk
had
about
this discussion, but we
So-
are paying for it.
So the property right now that we're, so let's talk about the Hy-Vee TIF. It's going to be about $2.3 million. Okay? It's going to pay for the infrastructure of those roads. Okay? If that TIF doesn't pay for the infrastructure, who pays for it?
The taxpayers do.
The rest of the taxpayers will be paying it. So all we're really doing is shifting so that that developer, which is actually in this case, Hy-Vee is loaning the money, so we don't even have to borrow the money for it, which is a really good thing for us because there's zero risk to the community. So that money, once the store goes on, they can't get any money back of the money they're putting in to do their infrastructure until their store is there, developing increment, which puts pressure on them to build that store. Because there's a potential that they could come and say, well, we're going to sit here and not build anything for 7, 8, 10 years, which doesn't really it's not really what we want to have happen. So that money now that's put in there to do that infrastructure, you don't have to pay for any of that infrastructure. That TIF is paying for that infrastructure.
But where's the TIF money coming from? You said that money is coming from a different thing. Yeah.
So that
In
money
this
is
case.
coming
In
from
this
Hy-Vee.
case.
So the increment that's developed or brought in now, which Hy-Vee's paying, they're paying the tax, we're giving that back to them. to
Yeah,
pay that
but this is
$200,000.
one case scenario.
That's how they all work.
But that still affects our taxes because that TIF money does not go to our schools, it doesn't go to our police, and somehow the load that all this extra development is coming from that causes more load on our police department, on our fire department, on our EMS, the issues with our roads that we have in the rest of the part of town, that comes out of the taxpayers who are paying, and our taxes then go up. The levies are going up. They're going up for the school as well as for the village.
Yeah, so I will not speak for the school, but I would challenge you, if you go to the school board meeting and ask them, what impact did the Kilkenny TIF have on your bottom line?
They tell us,
We've had
and
that
we've
discussion.
talked to
We did
the
ask
school
them,
board, we've actually talked to them.
And what did Steve Summers say?
So it doesn't affect us,
They said
It-
it's head count.
it's a head count
They
thing.
said it basically was a
And
head count.
eventually it comes back to the taxpayers. It doesn't affect how much money they get, those kids don't affect, but it does come back on the taxpayers who are paying.
And in the end, then he also said that the 100 home thing, that was something that was way back 15, 18 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
That was like a theory that they 100 homes a year would help them. And he said,
Right.
really, it hasn't, and that's when he went to the head count. He
Yeah.
said, basically, with the state formula, it ended up being the head count that was the most important thing.
Right.
It wasn't the housing.
It's not the number of houses, it's how many kids who are living in those
Yeah.
houses.
So he told us that, because we said that what we're being told is that you gotta have the houses. And he said, well, it's nice to have the houses too, but he said, really, that isn't it. The state formula is it. And it was all based on head count instead. But can I show you something what everybody's talking about? This will make more sense if I put it up here. Going outside of town, we had that, you got all them, all the businesses, the dog food place and the bank and what have you here, the church is over here.
Yeah.
So that it was one lane, it was our double lanes, it was, and everybody seemed to be happy with everything. Now, they did a TIF so that they could get their promenade built here, right? Their double entry, real nice and everything. Now, they're paying for that. Okay, so let me take you through a scenario quick. I'm down here at the, that works real good. I'm down here at the Lone Girl with my buddies, and one of my buddies owns the bank, and one of them, I got the dog food place, and somebody else has got the medical, and here we are. And we got this one road going down through here. And so then we say, geez, our people are just driving right by, they aren't coming in, we aren't getting the business. If we widen this, the church is over, I get more people at the church and the funeral home, and so, we'd get a lot more people, they'd have time to pull over more, they'd get time to come up along here more, be able to get off and in and out more. I bet you we'd get more business. How we, well, lo and behold, somebody at our little meeting down here at the bar says, get a TIF. And they said, well, what are you talking about? If we get a TIF and we pay for the road and we can talk the village into a TIF, we can get this whole new road built all the way we want it, with the lights we want, the traffic, the stop sign, whatever we want to have here. I'm putting my bank in here. I want a stop sign right there. I want to make sure them people turn right around in front of it. Okay, so we'll get a TIF. That way we aren't paying our taxes. The village wants our taxes in their bank. Here's the village bank. We aren't going to put it there. We're going to take our taxes through that TIF and we're going to put it in our little bank, and we're going to make our tax money work for us. And that's the way I look at it. That's what they did. They talked the village into the TIF that created their beautiful little promenade up there to help with their businesses.
And just as a point of clarification, when you do set a TIF up like that, the baseline stays the same. So if those businesses were there and they were paying their taxes, the baseline of what they were at, it's only the improvement that the increment goes from to the left side bank, as you say. So when those improvements are made, whatever the increase in value of that property is, that increment is then siphoned off. But the baseline taxes, the taxes that they were paying for the school and the county and the village, those all stay the same. Correct. So it's not as though the full amount of the taxes goes away. I just want to make that point of clarification because that's an important point. It's only the improvement, the increment.
Then what about their extra taxes then? I mean, the amount that what they're paying for it. So even though they're still paying the base amount of taxes, then the rest of the taxes that they would have paid to the base, they're now paying to this?
So
they're paying
the
for
taxes that were generated because of the increase in the value
of their properties?
Of their properties, yep, exactly. If they had an increase in the value of their properties, that increment would go towards the new TIF, but the baseline would stay going to the city, the county, or the village, the county.
So they're still paying into the village?
Correct.
Okay, so they're still paying into the village this amount?
Correct. Yeah, whatever.
But their extra taxes, the value taxes, they're paying to themselves?
Correct. They're paying towards the district, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. But it's important to know that it's not as though all the taxes are shift over.
Well, wait a minute now. So if they're paying back to this district, then this district is being paid for by their taxes.
A portion of it. Whatever the increment would be from the improvements. Yeah, but not the full amount of their taxes.
A good amount of it.
A good amount of their
But
taxes
the
stays in
taxes
because it was farmland.
their taxes are paying for this.
Yeah,
So in effect, okay, so my home and everybody's home here, right here in town, we want a TIF. I want to take my $4,200 for my 1875 dump that probably is going to fall down one day. That's what I'm paying. $4,200, and when the assessor comes in the basement, he doesn't know the difference between a one-pipe steamer, demand boiler, and a furnace. And I refuse to tell the bastards the difference. They're that stupid. I won't do it. So I want to take my $4,200, I want to improve my windows. So I've taken my $4,200 and I want to put all new windows in my house because I can't get gas unless I make my home the same as a new home energy efficiency. I can't get gas until I do that. How are you gonna make an 1875 home like a new one? Okay, so you're telling me that I should be able to, I put the windows in here, that's gonna bring my value up, so that extra, say $500 in taxes, then I should be able to pay that for those windows.
I don't know if you can actually do residential.
Right.
I don't know if you can actually do, in some states, I don't know if we can do it in Wisconsin, they call them enterprise zones or residential.
Well, I'm saying, let's assume you could do this. I can't. But these businesses put their whole new promenade in up there, taxes that would have, well, no, wait, okay, there wouldn't have been the improvement, so that they'd have still been paying in the same amount of taxes, but it did improve them, and they took that money, and instead of paying that improvement here, they kept it for themselves. They were able to spend that improvement taxes on themselves. I would be able to spend my improvement taxes on myself. And so would everybody else in the village that wanted to improve. And we're not allowed any of that. And that's what...
And that's why the free market isn't free.
So see, that's the thing, Chris, is that these companies, you know, they just come into town like that and they're really feeding themselves. If this promenade here, this beautiful new, I mean, you drive up there, everybody still uses the 2 lanes they always used. I very seldom see anybody over here in the other 2 lanes. All the nice light, that was all for them, for their businesses. And it didn't improve anything but for themselves. But if I want to improve myself, I don't get that benefit. I'm just saying that's what I think the people, that's why I look at it, and that's why I think people get upset. It's just like Hope Deep, what is it? Is it 27 years? Yeah, I was going to say, I think people are upset about taxes because we see all these new homes, all these $1 million homes. And then, by the way, a lot of those homes out there aren't 500 and 700,000. They're $1 million. My son did a lot of sheetrocking in there. They're $1 million homes. Several of them out there.
So he made some money.
Hmm?
So he made some money.
Who made the money?
Your son.
My son?
Or his company.
My son made a little more than the...
He has a job, right?
My son made a little more than...
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, he made nothing, believe me.
So,
He doesn't live in Waunakee, right?
Hmm?
Does he live in Waunakee?
Oh,
No?
God, no. Couldn't afford to live there.
Yep.
My son has a little house up outside of Beaver Dam there, and he pays $725 a month for it. So he drives,
So,
but
Chris, I think what he's trying to say is how our village government sees a TIF is different
from how we see it,
than how we
that's
see
right.
it. And that's an important thing.
That's very true, Chris. That's very true. That's right. We see it a lot. And what we also see is with all these new homes, everything going up and these businesses, why our taxes aren't, you know, the way we look at it, for that shack that I live in, I should be paying $1,500 a year to the village with all this wealth, this unbelievable wealth out here in these homes and businesses and stuff. And that's what, it is true. Yeah, we don't look at it the same way.
And our streets are crumbling.
Yeah.
Our streets in the central area, Holiday Drive, and Raymond Road, all those in that area, they're terrible.
So that's where I live. And we have been, next year, Dorn Drive, there's several streets of Dorn Drive, we're getting to those roads to get to those things. We've made those decisions to increase.
Somehow, there needs to be more money put into the existing infrastructure than what's being put into it. Because we're paying our taxes for it. We certainly are.
I don't disagree. We may have to increase taxes to get to what you're talking about.
The streets used to be kept better, though. I mean, we've lived here for a long time. For a long time.
So part of the issues that's happened, and the difference is roads, and you guys should all go to a public works meeting to hear these things, because they really do a good job. And I don't even know this. If we look at the Michael Simon development where I grew up in, which is on 5th Street, just off Q, okay? When we replaced that road, the surface that you put underneath the road, they had a bare minimum, a little bit of that in there, which meant now that cost to repair that road exponentially higher than what our roads are today, that we have a much bigger base inside them, much better materials, so we won't have the situations we're having. So when you're talking about the older infrastructure and the crumbling of it, it's just very expensive to do that. And I can say, since I was on the board, we've been increasing that budget
It has increased
consistently since I became president. Before I was president, we had a budget, but we didn't really move it. And so I've been watching and trying to address that as best we can without it hammering our community all at one shot, which I don't think anybody's going to be okay with. I agree, people say they don't want their taxes to go up, but there's certain things that we have to take care of, and infrastructure is one of them. I was public comment the other night, and I was taken aback a little bit. Everybody knows what happened in Sun Prairie this year, right? It was a bad thing, right?
The explosion, yeah.
So if MG&E comes to the village because there's gas leaks underground, we're not going to get in their way
Right.
and stop them from digging up a road and taking care of it. We're not going to do that.
So are there gas leaks
No
on
different.
2nd Street?
That's why they're there, is taking
Okay.
care of those. Okay, there's a reason for that. It's no different than if a water pipe broke underneath and water was gushing
Right.
out everywhere
Right.
in the winter, we would get in there and repair that because that's necessary.
I don't think people were aware that there was gas leaks on 2nd Street.
So that's why they would be working and doing that. That's the only reason they would be doing it. is
At this
there's
time of year.
Correct. If it's just normal every day, repair, we're going to replace something or do something like that, that's taking place during those times. However, if they discover there's a problem, we want them in there. I'm not going to put a red tape as a government to say you can't get in there to fix that, because then all of a sudden we have a bad situation happen.
Well, the way the young man read his letter, though, I think he was under the impression that this was normal maintenance that was happening and there wasn't gas leaks. And I don't think anybody, I live on 3rd, we were never notified that there was gas leaks on 2nd Street. I would certainly hope somehow the village would let people in those neighborhoods that would be affected by gas leaks know that there's gas leaks happening.
Adam, are you writing that down?
Yep.
So,
Because that's the problem with those things, people make comments and you knew that, but yet you couldn't say anything,
Yeah.
And now we're here and we get the benefit of hearing that.
But they couldn't pinpoint it, could they?
correct, they're finding it. That's
Yeah,
the
they
issue.
couldn't
They know
pinpoint
there's
it.
a leak, so they have to, they want to get in.
Have they
and take
pinpointed
care of
it yet?
I don't know the answer to that.
I was just curious.
They won't?
I just was
I
wondering
think
if they
there's
pinpointed it
probably
yet.
something in the Tribune about it next week, though.
Oh, good.
Give me a little more detail.
Well, that would be good,
I know
but-
that Kevin just got back, and so he has all the documentation of what's been going on, and so he shared an email with Roberta about all.
It would have been nice for us in that neighborhood to know what's going on and why they're doing it. Because, if there was a gas leak, it would affect more than just 2nd Street houses also.
Oh,
If
yeah.
something would have
Yeah,
happened,
mine's right there.
it could have affected that whole central district.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we got it out. So wait.
Right?
Okay.
I just have a comment, and I think this kind of says something about most of us sitting here, is I talk to my kids about sometimes they don't understand the quality we used to have, whether it was buying a wash machine or a pair of socks or going to the doctor, the quality was there. Now, you buy a pair of socks, and unless you pay $18 to $20 for them, they're disposable. You wear them twice and throw them away because the toe's ripped out. You buy a wash machine, if you don't buy a $800, $1,200 wash machine, when it needs repaired, it can't be repaired because everything's pressed together and individual parts can't be repaired. And I think we had a different quality of life previously in Waunakee. And
What
some-
you just described would be everywhere, but yes.
Yes, but what I'm saying is,
can't pinpoint one to
but
keep
what I'm
that,
trying
yeah.
to say is, we remember when things were quality, and I'm not saying Waunakee isn't quality, but there's a lot of change. And for us to balance it out is pretty tough.
I guess we'll just close with that. I'm proud of our village. I think we have one of the best communities anywhere. And I travel for my regular job and go into a lot of different communities. They have many other issues that we don't even come close to addressing.
Like they're done.
We're very fortunate. with what we have here. And the problems and the things that you guys are addressing tonight are great for me to hear. Frank, thank you for your comments on the TIF. That's helpful to me to hear that, that there's a difference of opinion out there.
It's a different way we look at it.
Yes, that's what I mean. I mean, you look at it, that's a difference of opinion. I'm with that. It's important to hear that. We're not going to always agree on everything. I mean, look at our whole country right now is year and over year. Nobody wants to come here anymore and make sense and do common sense things to get things taken care of. It's unfortunate. But I do think that our community right now, we're in a very good financial place. There's been people that have commented that, we have this debt. Our debt is really, really, I have a handout for everybody to show you where we sit as a village with what we have for assets for that debt. So if you look at, we have about $40 million of debt right now, okay? Which we'll be paying down to, I'll just give these out to you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. I wanted to share it because that was a comment that we've heard lately, is that maybe we have too much debt. And we do not carry
Maybe you should put this in the Tribune.
excessive amount of debt. We've had this in some of our board meetings and it's been talked about. So the very first thing you'll see up there is our general fund. You'll notice the last couple of years, the board has had a policy for, I don't even know how long it's been, since before I was on the board, that we wanted to have at least a 20 to 25% fund balance. And what that is basically, if you think of a rainy day fund. Something goes catastrophe, you need funding. Well, you'll see on here, 25% is the high end. We're up at 34%. So guess where I went and tapped to try to get rural roads done. Okay, this is where I was able to go and say, all right, we can get more road funding from this area. You'll see PAYGO fund distribution there. So there's different projects that we're doing. So our tennis courts that are in very bad shape in Rip Park, okay? Dangerous to a point where people could get hurt in them. All of a sudden we have a $440,000 expense to repair that. Okay, that $440 comes out of this fund balance. Okay, so we're very healthy when it comes to where we're at with the village's finances. If you go on the opposite side there, 2019 our debt is at $39,412,000. By 2023 that'll be down to $28 million. Okay, this is assuming we don't have any borrowing. So all the debt came from, okay, we built the village center, we did the fire department, we did the EMS building, we did, all these things are part of that debt. So those are all assets that we now possess. The library, okay, is technically a $15 million asset, that we borrowed just right around 12 million, but I think we're down to, it's only going to be around 11.3. Is where it's going to end up. So that's another area of our financing that's important for the public to understand. Our debt levels are very low. The state sets a bar, basically, that you can borrow up to this dollar amount. We only borrow 50% of that. And we're at, right now, if you look at it, we're at our high point, and we're at 43%, I believe, is where we're at. I gotta see where it's on here somewhere. I'm sure it is. So, from a financial standpoint, we are in a very good spot as a village for the assets that we have. If you think of our parks, all the land that goes in those parks is part of that. Think if we develop one of those parcels, if we develop Rip Park by itself, all that acreage, how much value would that be? How many lots would go in there? If we were to sell it off, is what I'm getting at. So we have these assets that if the village was ever in trouble, that you could say, all right, well, we're going to sell this asset and we're going to get rid of this. We have those.
If you don't mind me adding, and I don't know if it's on there, Chris, but one of the things that, it's not just Chris or the village staff that says these things too. Every year we have a report done by Moody's that tells us what our financial condition is. And we sit at the top of the only thing that could make us get any better is if our village just continued to grow. That'd be the only thing that would help us get a better credit rating. So we sit at really stellar credit ratings from Moody's. We have that annually every year, and that helps us with our debt because it keeps our interest rates lower. And so when we do go out to borrow for the assets that Chris talks about, when people get bonds and municipal bonds, we're paying really cheap dollars for those sort of finances. So that's a testament to the financial strength of what the village has. And that's not just us saying it, that's experts saying.
So the chart at the top, this chart actually shows it the best. So the blue is where we could borrow. We could have borrowed up to, according to the state. And there's a lot of communities that are way up high in that blue area right now, debt-ridden. Okay, we on the other hand, we're well below half of that, and you'll see we're going to be projecting down. And the reason for that is we're paying off the village center, and we're paying off this debt. And right now, I don't foresee us having any major projects other than roads that we have to build. Our EMS is strong, our fire, we have a brand new fire, brand new EMS, brand new police station, basically. We have a brand new library. There's not a lot that we would need to build, is what I'm getting at, so that we're not going to have to take on those debts. So our main areas of focus, here's what we've kind of discussed, is our roads and getting those roads repaired. So as this debt goes down, you know, we may not continue it to go down in the event we, as a board, whoever's on that board, makes a decision that maybe we want to put money towards roads. Okay, maybe we're going to borrow for that. Okay, to get it taken care of in a more quick fashion than we are right now. We have a plan on how we're going to do it. It's just, it's over time that we're doing it. So,
Well, another thing.
does this help everybody? I mean, is this a good piece for you to see?
Being
Some
on,
information?
being on Public Works, I think one thing is we're trying to maintain roads that were sometimes built poorly. And once we get the roads rebuilt, they will last considerably longer. So then, hopefully there will be a period when the village actually can see where they're catching up, and it's because of things that were or were not done over the years, kind of, that we're in the spot we're at.
So reconstruction versus resurface is what we're really talking about. And you, if you all know what that means.
So what we did on Verlene was or not Verlene, Topeka and.
That was a
and those
That was
were
reconstruction.
Reconstruction, yeah.
Yep.
And
And
that's
part of
very
reconstruction is led by utilities underground sometimes.
Right.
That need to be redone.
I just have a comment. You know, that road building and the science behind what's needed in roads has improved. So people now understand what can happen. But also, we have had much more traffic on all those roads than we ever would have anticipated when they were originally built. So that leads to the deterioration thereof. So it's traffic and methods of doing things that have increased.
We even worked hard to get a horse and buggy on the road this year.
I'll bet.
So for our late tonight celebration, that was a challenge to get that done this year, but hopefully we can do that in the future. Those are things, and I spoke a little bit at that celebration about what, I'm really about the community and trying to involve the community with different events. One of the biggest issues I see, and this will come out I think in the housing study at some point, is how many people know a lot of people over in Southbridge that are in this room?
I used to.
How many of you know a lot of people over in Savannah Village? Okay? Waunakee used to be, you knew everybody in the center of the community. Everybody knew everybody, you knew what was going on in their family too. Okay, that's just how it was. Now it's, you know, you hear of the kids that have been coming from other places, breaking into people's homes, breaking into their cars, stealing their cars, doing those things. Okay? Well, what does that cause people to do when they get home? Well, they get home, what's the first thing they do?
Lock the doors.
Shut their garage door. You know, I recall coming home, and my dad coming home, and at the end of the day, the garages were never closed. The doors were never locked. All the neighbors came together and talked about different things. I mean, that's just where it was. So I knew all the parents, I knew all the kids as well as a result of that. So the things that I've been trying to do, and whether people know this or not, I'm glad Roberta's not here, I should put some trivia in probably, but those events are designed for all people. And when you get to the event, don't just stay with somebody you know. Introduce yourself to 2 or 3 other people. You're going to learn and know what those people believe too. Because there's different beliefs in our community right now about what should be happening or shouldn't be happening. So I try to talk to as many people as I can to get that input from all the different areas. Because you have to be able to relate to all their different situations and what's going on in their worlds. And the people out in Southbridge, you live in Southbridge?
Oh, no, I was going to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
But, sorry, I didn't
No, go ahead.
interrupt.
Yeah.
What did the people out in Southbridge, et cetera, because we talked to you about the downtown area, what do they want to see downtown? I don't talk to anyone out there anymore, to be honest.
So part of the whole downtown and what we're trying to accomplish there. Same thing with our corridors, is get people to come to them. So people in Southbridge, where do they generally go?
Madison.
They go to Madison. They go do everything in Madison. They don't even come downtown. They don't even know Piggly Wiggly's there, most of them.
No.
Yeah.
They'll go
What
elsewhere.
restaurants we have.
Okay?
I was
We-
talking to a lady in the senior center today, she didn't know, she thought Spring Garden was a Chinese place. She said we had no restaurant in town other than McDonald's that served breakfast. And I said, oh no, I said, you've got to go to Spring Garden. It's a wonderful little restaurant, family owned. They have the best breakfasts in the world. As good as what O'Malley's used to serve, I think.
So, but that's my point, is that you try to get events that people are going to come to. So
Right.
the 4th of July, I try to get everybody in to repart, and I want people talking to each other, doing things. Like tonight, we started that. I want people to come into our downtown, to see our downtown, to know what's there, and then to meet people. I think it's so important, because a lot of people, like I said, they come home, close their door, they might not even know who their neighbor is 3 houses down, let alone across the village.
Well, and the other thing
So-
is, there are things we can do within our own neighborhoods if we look for it. Many years ago, our neighborhood used to have a Christmas party, but we haven't had that for years. So this February or March, I'm going to have a cabin fever get together and put right a thing. I'm going to make a batch of chili and please come, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to have help, and we're going to go up our street, clear to the 300 block of Verleen, include them, and then we're going to go across the alley and do that side of the street across the alley. It's not because I need something to do or I want to cook that much. It's because I want people to get to know each other and to talk. Because if we do that, we'll be safer, because if we talk, we can talk about things that are going on and that we see. And I think that's what I thought communities were, and I hope somehow we can get back there. Nationally, I've been reading, they say that one of the things that this country is really missing is a sense of community.
Which is,
I was gonna say, like, I've enjoyed working on different committees, like the Library Capital Campaign Committee and the Housing Committee, because I'm meeting people who are from these other areas and getting to know them better. And I'm wondering if there can be more encouragement of more kind of community-oriented committees that involve different areas. But the other thing, when I've lived away and gone to new communities, there was something like a welcome wagon that invited you. An older community person would go and greet you and talk to you about what nice things are going on in the community and welcome you. Do we have anything like
Yeah,
that?
we've got high neighborhood.
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ah,
yeah, we do. Diane Anderson.
Diane Anderson, yeah.
Okay.
well, that's good to know.
Oh, yeah, she does.
So this is what I'm getting at. Just, I wanted to, everybody has opinions throughout the village. The whole issue that was going on downtown, I'm not going to talk about that issue, really prompted our downtown crowd really to speak up, and it's great. I still can't talk about what I really want to talk about, but it's a great thing to have that community participation. At our board meetings, I love you guys coming. Those of you who are here in the room that come to the board meetings, I wish other areas would come too, because it's important to get all feedback, because there's different opinions on all these things.
Right.
And I respect all of you for taking the time and doing what you're doing, is what I'm saying. And it's a good thing for our community to have this discussion. So that's all I have for tonight.
So thank you.
You guys all have a very Merry Christmas, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, you're okay. That's just fine. Enjoy the holiday area, enjoy the lights, enjoy the things that you love. And Happy New Year.
Thank you.